The Russian army breaks through to Kherson. Catastrophe for the armed forces of Ukraine in the Kursk region. Russian forces enter Zaporizhzhia. Greetings, friends. Before we begin, I sincerely ask you to subscribe to the channel. By subscribing, you help the channel grow. Thank you to everyone who has subscribed. Let us begin with the DeepState mapping service. Over the past few days, we have repeatedly noticed that the service has practically stopped updating the frontline map. We speculated about the reasons behind this and proposed that the frontline situation had become so dire, so critical, that DeepState received instructions from higher authorities to cease reflecting defeats along the front line, essentially to stabilize the situation, at least online, and create the impression that the line is stable, with Ukrainian forces holding their positions, at least until Donald Trump's inauguration. However, today, initial details have emerged about what actually happened. Information was shared by Verkhovna Rada deputy Maria Bezula, who stated in a post that DeepState's issues stemmed from Kursk, who is unable to stabilize the front line and decided to stabilize it at least on the internet. Threats were even directed at this pro-Ukrainian mapping service, including calls for its staff to be mobilized and sent to the front line as infantry. This is the kind of story currently unfolding. We will see how it develops further. I remind you that DeepState is reportedly under the control of Budanov and the SBU. This situation may not just reflect a conflict between Kursk and the mapping service. It could be an early sign of discord among different branches of power within Ukraine itself. Now, let's move to the frontline areas. We start with the Zaporizhzhia salient, where, for several days now, the armed forces of the Russian Federation have been attempting to storm the settlements of Viktorivka, Stara Sorochina, and Mala Lokhnya. It appears that Russian units have managed to advance slightly toward this small agglomeration. Footage released by Ukraine's 82nd Brigade shows a significant amount of Russian equipment moving along a forest belt toward Mala Lokhnya. Some of this equipment was destroyed, but it remains unclear whether Russian units managed to capitalize on their success. However, part of the footage has been geolocated to this area, suggesting that the forest belt along the road between Mykolaiivka and Nova Ivanivka is now under Russian control. In general, the dynamics in this region are high. The map is updated almost daily, reflecting the intense changes. Russian units are expected to fight here until they reach the center of Mala Lokhnya. Next, we turn to the Kupiansk direction, where important updates have also emerged. According to pro-Russian mapping services, Russian forces have improved their positions in the eastern part of Dvorichna, with additional buildings coming under their control. Moving to the southern Kupiansk direction, reports indicate that the settlement of Terny has been fully cleared by Russian units, with Ukrainian forces retreating toward the villages of Mirna and Yampilivka. Essentially, Yampilivka is now the last settlement along the Zherebets River. There is ongoing debate about Toretsk, as some mapping services previously claimed it was fully under Russian control. This suggests that the battle for the Zherebets River is nearing its final stage. In the Siversk direction, there is increased activity by Russian forces near the settlements of Fedorivka and Vasyutivka. Drones are targeting forward Ukrainian positions, possibly preparing the groundwork for an encirclement of Siversk from the south and west. In the Chasiv Yar direction, Denis Pushilin, head of the DPR, stated that Russian units, possibly from the 82nd or 200th Brigade, successfully cleared the northern district of Chasiv Yar. This area lies between Haharina and Shevchenko streets, slightly north of the refractory plant. According to Pushilin, this neighborhood is now under Russian control. While much work remains, the Russian army continues to advance despite limited dynamics. In the Toretsk direction, Russian units, as confirmed by pro-Ukrainian sources, have approached the last remaining mine number 5, in the northern part of Toretsk. Footage shows strikes by FPV drones on forward Russian positions, leading to updated maps reflecting gains for Russian forces. The proximity of Russian units indicates that within a few hundred meters, combat will begin on the territory of the mine itself. This marks the final stage of the battle for Toretsk. Next, we move to the Pokrovsk direction, where intense and fierce clashes are taking place. The armed forces of Ukraine are regularly deploying equipment from Pokrovsk to the south to counterattack Russian forward positions. However, it seems unlikely that the Ukrainian forces will be able to regain these positions. Following the capture of this bridgehead, Russian units managed to entrench significantly, strengthen their combat lines, and are currently preparing for offensive operations toward Pokrovsk itself. It is doubtful that these assault actions will begin this year, as the Russian army is presently focused on clearing and expanding the bridgehead westward. The most significant updates are coming from that area. West of Novotroitsk, map changes were noted based on objective control footage published by the Ukrainian side. In the footage, a Russian soldier can be seen moving toward the eastern part of Novotroitsk and coming under artillery fire during the movement. This confirms the presence of Russian units in the eastern part of Novovasilivka along Sadovaya Street. Based on this footage, map updates now reflect Russian control over the perimeter from Pushkina to Novovasilivka. Next, we move to the Kurakhove direction, where information has surfaced today about a Russian attempt to advance from Novo-Alexeyevka toward the settlement of Ukrainsk. However, this offensive appears to have been unusual. Let's try to understand what went wrong. Before the Russian army initiated the attack, the bridgehead was cleared using FPV drones, which destroyed all Ukrainian equipment in the area. Once the command was given, Russian units began their assault. However, there was a significant problem. Ukrainian sources noted that Russian forces advanced on Novokranka using only civilian vehicles. Footage shows a column of Russian civilian vehicles coming under artillery fire along the front line. In the footage, 6 civilian vehicles are seen traveling along the road just north of Balka Shiroka. This convoy was detected by the Ukrainian side and subsequently came under artillery fire, resulting in its complete destruction. This incident raises questions about why Russian forces would use civilian vehicles for such an operation without armored protection. Perhaps the plan was to rely on speed and mobility. Continuing toward Kurakhove, there have been almost no updates from this area in the past 24 hours. After clearing Solntsevka and Zarya, Russian forces are gradually probing Ukrainian defenses north of the Andriivka fortified area. There has been a noticeable, though small, concentration of artillery strikes and drone attacks on a Ukrainian company-level stronghold. This fortified point appears to be the next target for Russian forces as they aim to outflank the Andriivka fortified area from the north. Regarding Kurakhove itself, no significant updates have emerged in the past day. The same applies to the bridgehead along the Suky Yali River. Despite Russian forces controlling nearly all settlements in the area, no further news has been reported. However, there was a minor update from the pro-Ukrainian mapping service DeepState, which indicated slight progress by Russian forces west of Zelenivka, suggesting an advance toward the settlement of Rozliv. While this map adjustment was noted, neutral cartographers had reported these changes several days earlier, so the DeepState update did not reflect a new shift in the front line. Finally, we move to the Velyka Novosilka direction, where several interesting updates have emerged. According to a summary from the Russian Ministry of Defense, the settlement of Storozhevi has come under firm and confident Russian control. However, questions remain about how exactly Storozhev was secured by Russian forces. Let me remind you that over the past several days, the Russian army has been attempting to advance between Rovnopol and the Mokry Yali River toward the 0510 road. Some sources have already marked both Makarivka and the fields as under the control of Russian units. However, Ukrainian mapping services still report that a Ukrainian garrison remains present in Makarivka, which has now been completely encircled and has lost all contact with the mainland. Meanwhile, Russian forces have crossed the Mokry Yali River near Blahodatne, with the assault on Storozhevi coming from the east. This indicates that the offensive is progressing via river crossings. On the other hand, pro-Russian sources primarily claim that Russian forces have managed to approach the 0510 road and may have even physically cut it off. Ukrainian mapping services have also updated their maps, noting that the 0510 road is no longer under firm Ukrainian control, but is now contested or within a grey zone. Currently, fighting is ongoing over a small stretch of the 0510 road between Vremivka and Rovnopol. The Russian army's goal appears to be the complete severing of this route and the creation of a full encirclement. While everything seems to be heading toward the formation of such a cauldron, it's important to wait for additional confirmation, perhaps videos with flags or further evidence, to to verify these reports and map adjustments. If the information about the 0510 road being cut is confirmed, then Velyka Novosilka will automatically find itself encircled, with no possibility of evacuation. Next, we move to the Zaporizhzhia direction, where intense and fierce battles are underway. The Russian side is gradually consuming the grey zone, advancing toward Novoandriivka and Novodanilivka. Artillery strikes are targeting Ukrainian positions, which are being identified and destroyed by artillery and aviation before Russian assault groups move in. Once these groups clear an area, consolidation teams follow, and thus, meter by meter, Russian forces are advancing toward Novodanilivka and Novodmitrivka. On the other hand, Ukrainian units continue to mount counterattacks from the Kupiansk area. Currently, there is heavy small arms combat within the settlement. Some mapping services have updated Kupiansk in favor of Ukrainian control. Yesterday, objective control footage confirmed the presence of Ukrainian forces in the settlement, and today, mapping services have continued to adjust the map to reflect this. Fighting continues in this area. As for the Kherson direction, it has been relatively quiet over the past 24 hours. Yesterday, there were numerous reports of air and artillery strikes on Ukrainian positions. Most information has been coming from Ukrainian sources, which claim that the Russian army is attempting to cross the Dnipro River. There were also reports that Russian forces aim to establish positions near the dachas close to the Antonivsky Bridge. Some Ukrainian sources even reported an attempted crossing and landing by Russian forces on the Ukrainian-controlled side near the settlement of Antonivka. However, according to Ukrainian reports, these forward positions were promptly detected and neutralized. It seems that some developments are occurring in the Kherson area, but the situation remains unclear. Overall, the activity in Kherson might be related to a potential escalation in Transnistria.